if we can transfer all that intellectual property to a virtual environment and use Zoom instead of having to fly out and all the overhead of in-person events and working with clients, it's great, in theory, from a business perspective.
Because if you're working in a job cycle, hardly people get such thoughts that they need to leave the job and start their own business. So what was the motivation behind that thought?
COVID really, really negatively affected the business in a short term. Sales technology has grown over the last few years to support salespeople, and we're starting to really focus on how to optimize sales technology and be sure to use it correctly in your sales process.
Hello everyone, my name is Ali. I'm the CEO of Al-Burraq Technologies. Today we have an amazing sales guy with us. David, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for asking. Okay, David, first of all, I want you to give your introduction so that people can know how big you are.
Sure. About 6 foot, 200 pounds. I'm David Dulany with Tenbound, and we work with companies on their sales development process, and especially around their sales technology stack. And so we've seen how sales technology has grown over the last few years to support salespeople, and we're starting to really focus on how to optimize sales technology and be sure to use it correctly in your sales process.
Of course, we are going to talk about the sales technologies and the process a lot because today we have captured you. So we are trying to get more from you today. But before that, before we talk about 10 bounds, there should be some journey, right? And I am more interested to know about that journey that has enabled you to make 10 bounds today. So tell us more about that journey.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was a salesperson and a marketing executive in the corporate world for a number of years, but I had always wanted to be an entrepreneur. It was just kind of a different world back in when I joined, the workforce. This is 20 plus years ago. I want to tell you how old I am. But it wasn't as prevalent, and there wasn't as much of a path laid out as today in becoming an entrepreneur. And so, I was in the corporate world working, and, everything was fine. But I was in between jobs, and I started doing some consulting with companies here in Silicon Valley on their sales process and their sales development process. And just realized that, hey, maybe there is a path to starting your own thing. And I was very, lucky to have the support of my family and especially my wife, who's still working today. And we were able to start Tenbound and working directly with companies on their sales process. And it just sort of evolved from there.
Right. So when you say that there was something in back of the mind that you are going to start your own business, what was the motivation for of that? Why you were thinking like that? Because if you are working in a job cycle, hardly people get such thoughts that they need to leave the job and start their own business. So what was the motivation behind that thought?
Oh my gosh. Well, I just dreamed about it every day for way too long. And, a piece of advice I
Right.
would have for younger people is before you have the wife and the mortgage and the kids and everything, do it. When you don't have as many overheads, that you have to think about. But for me, it had been calling me every day, thinking about, starting my own thing and doing my own business. And I just sort of got caught in the golden handcuffs of the corporate world, and all of a sudden, 10 years has passed and you're still dreaming about it. And I think that it was just I don't like working for other people, and I like to determine my own path and my own day and what I'm doing, and for better or worse, come up with ideas and execute on those without having a boss. I mean, to be honest.
Right. So when you say to the young people that do it before you have mortgage or kids or whatever the overheads involved, you started before that or after that?
Way after. So I had
Okay.
established that lifestyle, based on a cushy, corporate salary. And being here in the Bay Area, I had been working in the sales training industry for a number of years, and then got into the tech world, right when it was starting to really boom. And there was definitely a path, and there was a lot of opportunities, and it was great, but there's always that nagging feeling in the back of your head to want to start something. And so it just happened that I was in the right place at the right time, and I had the support. I think that's really critical, to be able to try something.
What I'm trying to
Mhm.
understand is that at that time, I can understand the kind of pressure you had
Yeah.
because if you have developed that lifestyle based on your corporate salary, that means that you were living a very good lifestyle and living in the Bay Area. For sure, that's a tough job, right? So tell us that story. How out of nowhere, right? Or out of your routine, you started your own company. So tell us that moments, that how those events occurred together, which enabled you to start that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I had established some expertise, especially in the subset of the sales process of the sales development team, or the SDRs or the BDRs. And I had a track record of success. And I knew a lot of people in the Silicon Valley area. And so I was able to network my way into some consulting gigs with the people that were trying to revise and update and write scripts and playbooks for their teams. And so the point I'm trying to make is, it was a service business from day one. And with a service
Okay.
business, you can monetize instantly based on your expertise.
Yes.
If I was going to do a product business, and or something like, and they call them sort of a J curve business, where there's a ton of
Yeah.
investment and you're not making any money potentially for years, and then finally it goes up if you hit something, that I don't know if I could have done, because I don't have access to capital. I don't know any VCs. I don't have any relationship to the world of investing and that type of thing.
Right. So that makes sense because selling services and selling a product are two entirely different things. And because you were in the consulting business, so that made the path
Yeah.
easier.
And
So that makes sense now. Now I'm connecting the
And
dots.
I mean, we had to make tons of sacrifices. I mean, I still drive a beat up, Toyota Corolla for, a million years. And it's
Right.
not all sunshine and rainbows, for sure. But the way that Tenbound evolved was a mix of services and events, and eventually it got some traction to the point where it was able to somewhat replace the salary that I walked away from. But it took a long
Right.
time, and it wasn't easy.
Right. When we are talking about not easy
Yeah.
things, so you should tell us your hardest time as well in the 10
Oh my
bucks.
gosh. I mean, there COVID. Yeah.
It's Halloween coming, right? It's Halloween coming. So we have to make the scene light up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I know. I've got my Halloween mask somewhere, and I don't know if we're gonna when we're publish this, but today's Halloween, and this is very scary to think about. But yeah, If you think of Tenbound, there was the service side of training and consulting and working with companies. And we also started to do events where we brought people together from our industry for thought leadership and networking and learning at these events that we were doing. And it was all 2018, 19. It was all live, in person at the office in conferences and stuff like that. And then COVID just came out and just it was just gone. I still remember it. This sounds bougie, but I was in Hawaii, and I was loving life, right? And then all of a sudden, the whole country was shut down overnight, and I just remember one is what the hell are we going to do, and two is my dog is still in California. So how are we going to get home if we're stuck here? So, anyways, COVID really, really negatively affected the business in a short term.
Hmm. That I agree, but I do remember the COVID
Mhm.
time. In the COVID time, tech business was booming. There was certain kind of businesses which were booming as well, and your business was also somehow related to the tech. So
Yes,
that should cover some time. Initial 2 to 3 months, those were hard because nobody knew that how things are going forward. But after 2, 3, or 4, 5 months, people started living that way.
exactly. Yeah. And we had to, I look as a business owner, if we can transfer all that intellectual property to a virtual environment and use Zoom instead of having to fly out and all the overhead of in-person events and working with clients, it's great, in theory, from a business perspective, because it's a very big reduction in the overhead that's involved in delivering these things. But it took a while. One is retooling everything to be virtual, and then two is making sure that the customers get the experience that they got in a in-person environment and were happy with what we were doing. And I hopefully, um, and it ended up working out fine, and we started to move back to live conferences and working with clients, in their office. But it was a hard transition to go through.
I can agree with that because we were less impacted because our model was already remote
Yeah.
because we are doing staff augmentation services and providing software engineers or websites, mobile application development services, and we were already offshore. So that is why for us it was kind of easy to manage the COVID because our operations were already remote and we were used to of working remotely, communicating remotely. Our clients were remotely uh, connected to us. So for us it was pretty much soft transition, but for many businesses in which you had to meet your clients in person because when you're connecting the people in person and when you're connecting remotely, there is a huge difference of empathy.
Mhm.
And that transition is always hard. So I can completely understand what you are saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, uh, let's mo- let's move to the next thing, right? When you transformed your business in COVID, how did you manage to do that? What were your thoughts, and from where you got these ideas that you can transform your business completely to survive the COVID?
Yeah. Well, in all crisis, there's opportunity. And at first it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Because we had two conferences planned, completely planned, booked in. Everything was already, the deposits were in, and one in San Francisco and one in New York. And it's just like, what the hell are we going to do? So thing number one was unraveling, the commitments that we had made. And then thing number two is looking at it as an opportunity in that, like I said, the margins are much better on remote work. The company, Tenbound itself, was already remote. We had a WeWork office, that we would use occasionally, but we had people all over the country. We were remote first as a company, and we had the intellectual property to do the training and consulting online and to run virtual conferences. And so I looked at it and go, wait a minute. I mean, if we can actually make this work, it creates a situation where Tenbound can be instantly available for people all over the world, and we can run it more efficiently. And so that was the challenge of 2020 and 2021 of being able to do that effectively.
I think the most important quality in an entrepreneur is that he knows whenever there is a problem, there is a solution or there is an opportunity, right? And that shows the kind of personality you have as well, that you made sure that you have to avail the opportunity as well. So that was a good part. Okay, so let me ask you one more thing. What was the hardest sale you have ever made? Tell us that story.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think of one.
It's
Yeah,
Halloween.
it
It's Halloween. I
is.
can ask.
This is scary. I think of one where a company was doing a sales kickoff for a group of, I want to say,
Yeah.
like 50 SDRs and, salespeople. It was a big, big group of people. And we were, bidding up against much more established companies that do SKOs. And a sales kickoff it's a big event, and a lot of bigger companies will hire companies like Tenbound to come in and run a session or run a presentation for their salespeople. And we go up against these huge sales training companies that do these all the time. And there was just a very short timeline. We had to prove the value of everything that we do. We had to work with a number of stakeholders who had a lot at risk, for making sure that they get the right company to come and help them with this training. And there was a lot of legal work that had to go into place, which is never fun, as people know. But to make a long story short, we somehow got the deal. We went in and pulled it off brilliantly. They loved it. They had a great time, and they're hopefully will come back again and do another SKO with us.
Right. What were the most important key factors that made you win that,
I
according to
hate
you?
to.
Of course, they won't tell you that it's CN, but according to you, what were the key points that you think that is why you were selected?
Yeah, I hate to say this because it's not helpful for people, but it was the relationships that we had.
Okay.
I knew because I've just been around for a long time. I keep saying that, but I knew,
No,
yeah.
it is always
I
helpful.
mean, what can I say? I knew the boss. He had been
Right.
from a past life when I was in the corporate world.
Yeah.
The guy who was vetting out vendors knew us through the Tenbound community and was kind of friendly with the community that we have built over the years. And we had an
Yani.
open line of communication. I had a guy here at Tenbound who was an excellent salesperson. He was the best, and I miss him dearly because he doesn't work here anymore. But he was great. It just everything came together for this, and it was awesome that we got the deal. So
So PR is very important, and a lot of your business is through the PR. So that is something that everybody should learn. That if you can build a good relationships with the other people, that is going to help you in the
yeah,
business.
yeah, and it's indirect. I mean, I'll if somebody comes to me and they need something like that's relevant to something that I can help with, and they're just honestly they need help, even from an SDR to the head of a company. I don't care. I'll help them out if I can. I don't expect
Right.
anything in return. I feel like it's more like a karma thing that maybe someday there's these degrees of separation, it'll come back. But it's just being active in the community and helping out when you can. It'll come back.
It definitely
Yeah.
come back. And the bad thing is that bad thing or good thing that you have just recently updated your website. Otherwise, I would have offered you to update your website
Hey, we
because,
still need
because
it.
that is what we are doing, and we can help you
Yeah,
with that.
I'll call you.
Okay, you still need it. Perfect. You can
Yeah,
communicate. Okay.
everybody should call
Okay.
you.
So
You guys are the best.
thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the kind word. This section was not paid.
Yeah,
Dear audience, this section was not paid. This section was not even planned.
definitely.
Okay. The next thing I'm going to ask you is in most of the cases, the hardest sales are the best ones as well.
Yeah.
But if there is something different, that what was your best sale, if I would say? Best sale, or you can say the biggest sale you have ever made.
Yeah, I mean, I won't name names, but there's some of those. Yeah. Oh,
Numbers?
numbers?
Numbers? You can name the
Yeah,
numbers?
I mean,
Yeah.
5 figures, above 5 figures, which is big for us. Over $30,000 is a big account for us, and especially in the when we sell sponsorships for our events that we do. Anything above that number is
Right.
big. And there's certain sort of royalty in Silicon Valley, especially in the sales technology world. There's like maybe 5 or 6
Yeah.
companies that if you work with them, you're in the royal glow of these really successful companies here in Silicon Valley. And we got one of them to be the lead platinum sponsor at one of our conferences that we did in San Francisco. And it was really,
Right.
really hard because they have so many people, involved in vetting out, opportunities. And I mean, they're just, they've just had so many employees at these big enterprise companies that everybody needs to kind of pick at all the deals that they're making and make sure that it's approved and all this stuff. And again, you go back to the paperwork and the procurement and the legal. It's hard to work with those big companies, but we got them, and that was a big win for us.
Right. Because you have joined us today, so I'll take privilege, right? And I'll ask you some sales related
Of
questions as
course.
well, right? So tell me the importance of building a pipeline in the sales process.
Oh my gosh, it's everything. My mentor a long time ago told me that you want to have a lot of pots on the boil. If you're put all on another analogy, don't put all your eggs in one basket. uh, because
Yeah.
and we all do it because as a salesperson, you get very focused on the deals that you're making and the presentations and making sure that you close what you have. And now a week has gone by and you haven't been building your pipeline, or a month or a year, I mean, depending on it. And it's just something that you have to do every day, even if it's for an hour or two. And even if you're the top salesperson at your company, you have to focus on building pipeline, because you never know if some of those deals are going to fall out and you have nothing coming up behind it. The rule of thumb is that you always want to have 3 times to 4 times the pipeline that you need in order to close your number by the date that you have to close it by. And so I'd challenge everybody to look at their pipeline right now. And if it's 3 times the amount that you need, then hats off to you, because you're doing the right thing.
Right, right. That's an important lesson for me as well.
Me too.
And I'm going to start doing
Yeah,
that.
me too. I know.
Uh,
It's just
okay.
one of those things.
It's a very hard thing to develop a pipeline that is 3x to your 3x to what you're expecting or what your goals are.
Yeah, it's really hard, and there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
And as a salesperson, you're kind of a generalist. You have to know a lot about a lot of different things, and if you don't have any pipeline, then you got to think of like, what's your marketing plan? How are you going to work with your marketing department if you have a marketing department? Do you have SDRs that could potentially help? Are you doing your own prospecting? There's a lot that you got to think about. But at the end of the day, sales is all just results and what you're producing on the bottom line, and well, technically on the top line. But if you come and say, I couldn't make my number because of this and because of that and the yada yada yada, the boss is just hearing a bunch of excuses.
Okay. So next, I'm going to ask you how we should build our process of sales. Can you briefly tell us that?
Yeah, I mean, in sales is sort of the combination of art and science, and a lot of people come more from the art side, of the persuasiveness and those characteristics. So I think it's hard for people to think about sales process, and it's almost like two words that don't really go together. And it also depends on the size of your company. So if you're just starting out, you have no sales process at all, and you're just kind of winging it on every sales call, then the first thing I would do is just go to a whiteboard or get out a piece of paper and just write down what the process should be, based on the way that you're running calls right now. And there's a million sales books about how to run a sales call. So write out a process and then begin to fill that out with what you should be saying and doing throughout the time between you first talk to this prospect to closing the deal and even beyond. And there you go. You've got sales process 101 down. Now, if you're further along in the development of the company, there might already be a sales process in place. You might have a playbook or a sales trainer that works at your company. And if you're not following that sales process, or you don't think it's any good, then at least you have version one that you can start to work on and improve. And so, you know, that's where I would start.
Right. That was a good insight. And I think for the starting point, at least, people can start working on the sales process from there. In the last, I want you to give some advice to the people who are coming into the sales and who are the newbies so that they can build up their career in sales smoothly, or at least they can learn something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think of it in like kind of three buckets. One is the mentality and the personality for sales, in that you have to be able to take rejection and ambiguity and have the intestinal fortitude to keep moving forward in the face of people who don't necessarily want to buy your product today. So that's your mentality that you need to work on. Then there's the sales skills of being able to ask questions and listen and move prospects to the next step. You want to become an expert in those sales skills. And then the other thing to think about is the industry that you're calling on, and the product that you're selling, and how it actually solves the problems of the prospects. You need to be able to have some understanding of that industry and the vocabulary, so that you have legitimacy when you're actually talking to someone who maybe has been in the business for 20 years, and they want to know that you know enough to be able to help them, and you're not just somebody who's wasting their time, and not really, listening or helping them. um, so it's that vocabulary as well. So there's kind of those three big buckets that you have to focus on.
So you kind of need to be jack of all,
Yeah.
so that you know the certain process or whatever you are selling, you know the ins and outs of it, so that when you are when you are telling other people, when you are trying to persuade them to buy your service or your product, they should not consider you that you are a newbie and you don't know anything about the process or things you are selling.
Yeah, exactly. You're more of a you're trying to establish it, and this is really hard. If you're this is your first sales job and you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, that eventually you want to get to the point where you're like a trusted advisor, for this client, and they really come to you when they want to learn about the ways that they can solve problems that's relevant to what you're selling. That's the ultimate thing that you're trying to get to. You're not going to get to that overnight, but that's where you want to go, because then instead of you having to go outbound all the time and constantly cold calling and trying to drum up business, you have a network of people and they know that you're the best in this particular field, and you can honestly help them, and they'll just keep coming back to you as they need more.
All right. That was quite insightful. Thank you so much, David, for the amazing conversation. And I hope people watching this will learn a lot from you. And I personally thank you to join us on our podcast. And we'll stay in touch and keep talking.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much.